Welcome to another episode of Whispers of the Guilty, where we dive deep into the darkest corners of true crime. I'm your host, SyLence, and today we unravel a story that's as haunting as it is harrowing, the Hello Kitty murder. This case not only shocked Hong Kong, but also captured the attention of the global community due to its sheer brutality and the bizarre twist that gives this nightmare its name. We'll explore the events that led to Fan's tragic end, the depraved acts of her tormentors, and the chilling discovery that turned a beloved cartoon figure into a symbol of unspeakable horror. Join me as we piece together the story of Fan Man-yee, from her life and struggles to the sinister actions that led to her demise. We'll delve into the investigation, the trial, and the broader implications of a case that continues to evoke horror and fascination to this day. This is not just a tale of murder. It's a grim reminder of the depths of human cruelty and a sobering reflection on justice and morality in the modern age. Prepare yourself for a journey into the darkness. This is the Hello Kitty murder. Stay with us as we uncover the truth, and remember, in the world of true crime, the silence of the night is often broken by the whispers of the guilty. In the neon-soaked streets of Hong Kong in 1999, the night air was thick with the hum of bustling activity. It was a city alive, its heart beating rhythmically to the sounds of commerce and revelry. Yet beneath the surface glamour, darker currents flowed. Here, in this city of contrasts, one of the most heinous crimes in its history was about to unfold. Fan Man-yee, known to her friends as Ah Fan, was a 23-year-old nightclub hostess. Life had dealt her a harsh hand. Born into poverty, she was ensnared early by addiction, which cast long shadows over her troubled youth. It was her struggle to survive that led her to the neon lights of the nightclub district, a place where she hoped to escape the clutches of her past. Yet it was here, amidst the glitter and the smoke, that she encountered Chan Man-lok, a man whose reputation in the criminal underworld was as solid as the high rises that towered over the city. Chan, a 34-year-old pimp and drug dealer, was a man feared by many. With his extensive connections and a ruthless disposition, he maintained a tight grip on his illicit enterprises. Accompanying him were Leung Shing-cho, 27, and Leung Wai-lun, 21, both of whom were eager to prove their loyalty and brutality under Chan's guidance. The fateful interaction began over a seemingly trivial matter, a wallet containing $4,000, which Chan accused Fan of stealing. Whether the accusation was true or merely a concocted excuse to exercise power, it marked the beginning of a nightmare for Fan. With a fury that seemed disproportionate to the alleged theft, Chan and his accomplices abducted her, spiriting her away to Chan's apartment, a place that would soon become a chamber of horrors. The apartment was nondescript, tucked away on a quiet street, its exterior giving no hint of the depravity within. It was here that Fan was brought, a space dominated by Chan's menacing presence. Initially, the abuse was sporadic, a cruel word here, a slap there, as if testing the waters. But as days turned into weeks, the violence escalated horrifyingly. Chan and his cohorts embarked on a sadistic spree, treating Fan not as a human being, but as an object upon which to vent their most vile impulses. They beat her mercilessly, using their fists, feet, and an assortment of implements that turned the apartment into a torture chamber. Each session seemed designed not just to inflict physical pain, but to break her spirit utterly. The abuse wasn't confined to the trio of perpetrators. It was a grotesque form of entertainment for a revolving door of underworld figures who visited the apartment. These visitors weren't mere passive observers. Many participated, drawn into the circle of violence that Chan orchestrated. This communal aspect of the torture was perhaps one of the most chilling facets of the crime, reflecting a deep moral rot that had settled in the hearts of all involved. As Fan endured this relentless assault, the apartment walls, which once might have echoed with the mundane sounds of domestic life, now absorbed her screams, the thuds of blows, and the laughter of her tormentors. The outside world remained oblivious to her suffering, the vibrant life of Hong Kong continuing unabated just beyond the thin, uncaring walls. Fan's resilience was extraordinary, her spirit bending under the weight of her torment, but never completely breaking. That she could endure each day's new horrors was a testament to her inner strength, a strength that her assailants sought to obliterate with each passing moment. The Hello Kitty doll, an incongruous presence in such a bleak setting, sat perched in the apartment, soon to become a macabre symbol of the atrocity that was unfolding in that very space. As March gave way to April, the torments inflicted upon Fan Man-yee inside the grim confines of Chan Man-lok's apartment grew in intensity and barbarism. The small, cluttered rooms of the flat, filled with the stale air of cigarette smoke and fear, bore witness to an escalating series of abuses that blurred the line between cruelty and sadism. Chan, along with Leung Shing-cho and Leung Wai-lun, seemed to find a twisted pleasure in devising new and more horrifying ways to torment their captive. They forced Fan to stand for hours on end, her legs shaking with exhaustion, before they would begin their physical assaults. With each passing day, the beatings became more severe. They used metal pipes, which left deep bruises and welts across her back and limbs. They laughed, a cold, harsh sound, as they watched her struggle to remain standing, her body trembling from the pain and effort. In a particularly grotesque act of degradation, they fed her human waste, forcing it into her mouth when she was too weak to resist. This act of forcing Fan to ingest such filth was not merely a physical assault, but a calculated effort to strip her of her dignity and humanity. It was a message that she was nothing to them, less than nothing. The physical torture was accompanied by psychological torment. They taunted her, mocking her pain and suffering, telling her that no one was looking for her, that she was forgotten by the world outside. They kept her blindfolded for long stretches, disorienting her and heightening her fear of the unknown, of what new horror might come next. The sound of the door opening became a signal for dread, as she never knew if it was going to be another round of beatings or some new form of cruelty. During this hellish time, the apartment was occasionally visited by others, friends and associates of Chan and the Leungs. These visits were surreal and chilling. Some of these visitors participated in the abuse, either actively joining in or by watching and cheering, turning human suffering into a spectator sport. It was during one of these sessions that the idea of using the Hello Kitty doll as a grotesque container was first suggested, a perverse joke that would later become a haunting symbol of the entire case. Despite the relentless brutality, there were moments when Fan's spirit would surface, moments when she would whisper pleas for mercy, her voice hoarse and weak, but her captors were unmoved by her suffering. To them, her pain was the point of the exercise. They seemed to feed off her despair, using it to fuel their next bout of cruelty. As April turned to May, the condition of Fan deteriorated rapidly. The repeated beatings, lack of proper food, and constant psychological stress took a heavy toll on her body and mind. She became increasingly weak, her moments of lucidity fading as the trauma overwhelmed her. The men noticed this change and, in a twisted calculation, began to discuss among themselves what to do with her. They knew she could not survive much longer under such conditions. The discussions about Fan's fate were pragmatic and cold. There was no consideration of mercy, no thoughts of ending the abuse by letting her go. Instead, they weighed the options of how to dispose of her body, how to ensure that their crimes remained hidden. They considered the practicalities with a chilling detachment, as if the life of Fan Man-yee, a woman who had laughed and dreamed and suffered, was just another problem to be solved. As the final days of May approached, the decision was made. They would end her life, not out of mercy to spare her further pain, but to protect themselves from the consequences of their actions. The plan was simple and brutal, a final act of violence to conclude weeks of torture. Unaware of her impending fate, Fan continued to endure, her spirit flickering in the darkness, a testament to the resilience of the human will even in the face of unimaginable evil. The final act of Fan Man-yee's life began under the dim, flickering light of a single bulb that cast long shadows across the dingy apartment walls. Chan Man-lok and his associates had resolved to end her life, a decision driven by a cold calculation to eliminate the risk she posed to their freedom. Their discussions about how to carry out the deed were devoid of emotion, as if they were planning a mundane task. On a humid evening in late May, they gathered in the apartment for what would be the last time in Fan's presence. The air was heavy with the scent of sweat and fear. They started with a ritual that had become all too familiar, tying her to a rusty metal chair that had served as a throne of torture over the past weeks. Her body, already frail and battered from the relentless abuse, slumped under the constraints, her head hanging low as if she had already resigned to her fate. Chan initiated the session with a viciousness that was shocking even by his standards. He delivered blow after blow, targeting her weakened limbs and torso. The sounds of his strikes were accompanied by a chilling silence from Fan, who no longer had the strength to scream. Leung Shing-cho and Leung Wai-lun took turns, each unleashing their cruelty with pipes and electric wires, tools that had been carefully selected for their ability to inflict maximum pain without immediate lethality. As the hours passed, the assault became more about their frustration than any fabricated charges against her. They were angry that she had endured so long, that she hadn't succumbed to their earlier abuses. This night, their blows were fueled by a desperate need to conclude her story, to erase the evidence of their monstrous behavior. In the early hours of the morning, with Fan barely conscious and her life hanging by a thread, they paused. The room was silent, but for the labored breathing of a dying woman and the low hum of the city outside. They looked at each other, a silent agreement passing between them that it was time to end it. They discussed briefly, in hushed tones, not wanting to awaken any semblance of hope in Fan that might have lingered in her broken body. The decision was made to use a method that would leave no doubt to ensure her death would be absolute and immediate. They filled a bathtub with water, a grotesque parody of a cleansing ritual, and dragged her towards it. Fan's limp body offered no resistance as they submerged her. The water was shockingly cold, a stark contrast to the warm, sticky air of the apartment. Holding her down became a group effort, a final act of teamwork in their twisted game. The struggle was minimal. Fan's body was already on the brink of collapse from the accumulated traumas. As they held her under, the water became a mirror, reflecting their distorted faces, a trio of grim reapers in a macabre tableau. When it was over, they lifted her lifeless body from the water, laying it on the cold tile floor. The act had not brought them the sense of closure they had anticipated. Instead, there was a palpable unease, a fear of the repercussions now that the deed was irrevocably done. They knew they had to dispose of the body carefully, to remove any trace that could link them to this atrocity. Their plan for disposal was as cold and calculated as the murder. They dismembered her body, an act of unspeakable defilement that ensured her remains would not be easily identifiable. Her head was removed with a precision that belied their amateur status, and in a final act of mockery, they chose to sew it into the large stuffed Hello Kitty doll, a perverse trophy of their cruelty. The disposal of her other remains was handled with a clinical detachment. They were scattered, intended to be lost amidst the city's refuse, as if she was just another piece of waste to be discarded. As dawn broke over Hong Kong, the deed was done. The apartment was cleaned with meticulous care, every surface scrubbed, every trace of Fan Man-yee erased from the physical world, if not from the moral landscape of those involved. The morning after Fan Man-yee's life had been cruelly extinguished, the city of Hong Kong woke to another day, unaware of the brutality that had transpired within the confines of a nondescript apartment. Chan Man-lok, Leung Shing-cho, and Leung Wai-lun felt a temporary relief wash over them, believing they had effectively covered their tracks. The silence of the apartment was now a testament to their sinister deed, and for a moment, it seemed they might escape the consequences of their actions. However, the veneer of normalcy was short-lived. Among the circle of people who had witnessed parts of Fan's ordeal was a young girl, a girlfriend of one of the perpetrators. Traumatized by what she had seen and haunted by the horrors that replayed in her mind, she found herself grappling with the weight of the secret. The image of Fan, tortured and broken, invaded her dreams, leaving her restless and tormented by guilt. Compelled by a mix of fear and a desperate need for absolution, she made the decision to approach the police. Her initial statements were disjointed, the details obscured by her fear of retribution from Chan and his associate. But as the officers listened and reassured her of her safety, the story of Fan Man-yee's cruel fate began to take shape. The police, skeptical at first, were soon drawn into the gravity of the claim. They organized a raid on Chan's apartment, not fully prepared for the grim scene that awaited them. Upon entry, the apartment offered few clues of the atrocities committed there. It was eerily pristine, the smell of bleach heavy in the air, a stark contrast to the violent acts it had recently hosted. But as the investigation progressed, small, damning pieces of evidence began to emerge. Hidden in the false bottom of a closet, they found Fan's identification cards, her personal items, and most horrifically, the Hello Kitty doll that contained her skull, a chilling centerpiece in this grotesque tableau. The discovery sent shockwaves through the police force and later, the community. The media descended on the story, each headline more sensational than the last, painting a lurid picture of the crime that captivated and horrified the public. The trial that followed was a spectacle, drawing attention to not just the brutality of the murder, but also to the dark underbelly of Hong Kong's criminal world. Chan Man-lok, Leung Shing-cho, and Leung Wai-lun were charged with manslaughter, a charge that many criticized as too lenient given the savagery of their act. The courtroom was packed every day, the public eager to see justice served. Testimonies from forensic experts, neighbors who had heard strange noises, and the young girl whose conscience had driven her to the police painted a vivid picture of the last weeks of Fan's life. As the evidence mounted, the defendant's facade of indifference began to crack under the weight of the undeniable proof presented, and facing the prospect of life in prison, they turned on each other. Each sought to minimize his own role by exposing further details of the group's dynamic and individual acts of cruelty. This infighting only served to underscore their guilt and brutality. The verdict was delivered on a cold December day. The judge, reflecting the horror of the community, sentenced all three to life imprisonment, stating that the nature of the crime was so heinous that a maximum sentence was the only fitting response. The courtroom, filled with a tense mixture of relief and sorrow, echoed with the sound of the gavel. The Hello Kitty murder case left a deep scar on the psyche of Hong Kong. It raised uneasy questions about human nature and the the capacity for evil. It forced a reckoning with issues of law enforcement and justice, and it sparked conversations about the safety and value of marginalized individuals in society. The echoes of the case reverberated long after the sentences were handed down, a grim reminder of what happens when evil is allowed to fester unchecked. As the city moved forward, the legacy of Fan Man-yee's suffering became a call to action for better protection of the vulnerable and a more vigilant judicial system. Her story, though tragic, served as a catalyst for change, ensuring that her death would not be in vain and that her memory would serve as a beacon for justice and humanity. Thank you for joining me on this harrowing journey through the dark alleys of human nature as we explored the Hello Kitty murder. This case serves as a stark reminder of the cruelty that can lurk behind seemingly ordinary facades and the resilience of justice, even in the face of unimaginable horrors. If today's story moved you, or if you have thoughts and reflections you'd like to share, please comment below. We value your insights and engagement as we continue to delve into the most chilling cases from around the world. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with all our latest episodes here at Whispers of the Guilty. Every story we share aims not only to inform and intrigue, but to honor the memories of those lost and remind us of the vigilance needed to protect the most vulnerable among us. Join us next time for another episode that peels back the layers of the darkest human deeds. Until then, keep seeking the truth, and remember, sometimes the quietest whispers are the most telling. Goodbye for now.